Hi, this is Dan here. Hope you're doing really well today. In this video, I'm going to show you the 4 basses that I use mostly. So if you have subscribed to my channel, you know what I do already. Thanks very much. But outside of YouTube videos, I play live, or I do when there's not a pandemic, and I record a lot from this studio. So I've got a number of basses sitting around me here, but of all of them, these are the ones that I use the most. So starting off with this one, this is my new sort of YouTube bass. It's a 1982 Ibanez Roadster bass. It's got a PJ pickup. There's the P. There's the J. Most of the time I have it dead in the middle. My signal chain is always the same when I'm doing YouTube videos. It's bass into an Avalon U5, into a Universal Audio Apollo, straight into Logic. There's no EQ, no compression, no processing, nothing. That's just the sound of the bass. I'm very impressed with this bass. It's the cheapest bass I have. It cost me under £400, well under £400. Did a bit of work to it, upgraded the pickups. I'm really pleased with it. I've already done a couple of sessions with this. Anything sort of slappy or something needs to be fast, it works really well. So just because it's the cheapest bass and the one that I sort of earmarks for YouTube videos, I would still use this live. I would definitely use this for recording, but I use this a lot for YouTube videos. Next, we have a Man StingRay 5 that is, I believe, around sort of 2003, that sort of year. I had a couple of basses stolen, and I went to the bass centre in London, and it was between this and a Warwick, and I'm really glad I got this. And basically, I love Tony Levin's playing so much that swung it for me. But a 5-string is a real workhorse bass. I've played in the West End in London. I've played loads of cover gigs, loads of gigs where even if there's one song, this is a Leland Sklar thing, bass player for Toto and Phil Collins and many other people. If he plays one long gig and there's only one song that requires a below E note and a 5-string, he'll play the whole gig on that. And I'm similar. It's very much a workhorse bass. It's also good when a singer calls a different key last second. You can just shift around to the 5th string. I've played a 5-string since I was, 13, so it's no problem for me. I really like the tone of this bass. It's got these piezo pickups in the bridge. I hardly ever use them. But you've got that sort of more acoustic bass sound. And this is fully onto the magnetic humbucker here. It doesn't sound too much like a StingRay. It's not overpowering. I've actually started to use this a lot more in recording. If there's anything that's sort of rock or pop, it just sits in the mix well. I'll put some links to where I've used all of these basses below so you can have a little listen to them. But I find that this one, if it's good enough for Tony Levin, it's certainly good enough for me. And I think that says it all, really. But I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of professional gigs on this bass since 2003, and I know it's a StingRay. Not many people use StingRays in situations. I've done jazz gigs on this. I've done everything on this bass, and it really has never ever failed me. This is a 1978 Fender Precision. I bought it probably in about 2008, 9 or 10, somewhere around about that time. And I was never a P bass person. I was always a jazz bass person because of the neck and the sound, and because of Jacko. I was really into James Jamerson as well, but I never got round to buying a jazz until this. I was doing some sessions, and honestly, I can't tell you how the perception of me as a player changed when I walked into a studio with one of these. Before, I had shock horror. I would either take in a 5-string bass. Was it the StingRay? Yeah, I probably would have taken in the StingRay. I had a sort of modified Fender Jazz that wasn't that great, had an active preamp. You could switch that into passive, but really, producers and artists that are in the know, if you turn up with especially a vintage P bass, all is well as far as they're concerned. I can't recommend getting one enough. So many hundreds of thousands of hits have been played. James Jamerson, Tommy Cogbill, Carol Kay, the list is endless. People are used to that sound. And this has got an amazing neck, which I was surprised at. I was used to thinking that P basses had really unplayable necks. And when I played this, I bought this from Denmark Street in London. I found one bass across the road that I quite liked. That was about £5,000, and I played this and I preferred it, and I was like, what's this going to be? And it was £1,200 I bought that for, a long time ago now, but it was a very cheap bass. I haven't even ever had this bass set up to that point. It's got Elite players on it. They're quite dead now. I like that sound. We've got a volume and we've got a tone knob. And that's tone, usually I have it completely rolled up. I've probably recorded the most on this. If you don't know what I do apart from YouTube videos, the big thing really is remote sessions for me. I've done it for over 10 years, and I record for people all around the world. You know, bedroom enthusiasts too. I played on the Serpent, which is a BBC Netflix thing, so that's on now. If you check that out, some of the bass stuff on that is me, and this is the bass that has appeared on more tunes, over 1,000 tracks that I've recorded on now over the years, well over 1,000. This has been on the most, just because it doesn't sound very exciting when you play it for a YouTube video. It's certainly not very versatile, it just sort of does that sound. But there's something about the P bass, the frequency range that it sits in, the sonic space it fits in a mix, that just works. So, you know, this fits for so many different styles of music. This probably is the #1 bass that I use. It's the one that professionally has taken me the furthest, even though now that Ibanez, you know, I'm really enjoying playing that compared to this, but this is a great one. I should say that I also have a 1968 Fender Precision, which is more expensive and more desirable, even though it's not a pre-CBS model, but I do prefer that. I prefer playing the 78p. But I have one that's strung with stainless steel and one with flat wounds, just to get that different tone. This is the 4th bass that I use probably the most often, and it's a 1978 Man StingRay. The reason I got these 70s models was because when I was buying these about 10 years ago, they seemed to be the cheapest. I just played enough until I found the ones I liked, and I think it's I'm not sure what the price is on these now, but at least then they were relatively undesirable and they're amazing. Maybe basses like that 82 Roadster I've got are going to be similar. I don't know. 82 now starts to become vintage, so if you see one of those, maybe pick it up. But it's got this really punchy, slightly zingy high end due to the active preamp sound to it. And really, anything Bernard Edwards, you know, anything punchy or funky works with this. Also, it's really, really good, you know, for sort of anything rock is good. This is a really flimsy plectrum. I wouldn't use one of those. But anything rocky works for this, anything slap. Because it's vintage, we have this situation with this neck where it doesn't really move much anymore. And I have to just sort of keep my fingers crossed that the action doesn't keep raising and rising. Otherwise, at the moment it's okay, but any sort of further and I won't be able to play like that. So I'm hoping this bass sort of stays in one piece. But I absolutely love that StingRay tone. So those are probably the 4 basses I'll use. Honourable mention maybe to the Justin Meldal Johnson Fender Mustang I've got that I use, and that sounds amazing. If I had to have just one bass, or maybe let's say I don't know, it's so hard. Let's say 3. If I had to have 3, I would have all the ones I've shown you, maybe apart from the StingRay. I really like that Ibanez now, and it's sort of becoming part of my sound, really. So I'd keep that. The 78 has been on too many things. I'm going to keep that. And the same with the StingRay. It's been around the world with me, so I would take those. It would be hard to leave this behind. But those are the 3 basses I'd have. This is all subjective, by the way. You might absolutely hate the tone of one of those basses I've played. Fine. But also, never judge a bass that you hear on YouTube just on its own as I'm doing it now. You must hear them in context, in a band or on record. And I've probably got examples of all of these basses, apart from the Ibanez, recorded. So I'll dig out some recordings and I'll put a link below to a blog post where you can go and check those out. Any other gear questions you've got? I usually do videos on how to play bass, not sort of the gear side of things, but I probably will do a bit more on the gear side of things. So let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching. See you on the next video.